Hi, I'm Greg, this is Tony, and welcome to Little Wars TV.
And welcome to Festung Europa, Fortress Europe, the Atlantic Wall.
That's right, this year marks the 75th anniversary of the largest amphibious invasion in history, Operation Overlord. And we are going to bring you a war game so large and so ambitious that we've got to split this into a two-parter.
We won't just be wargaming Omaha Beach or some part of the invasion. We're fighting Operation Overlord in its entirety, from the paratrooper drop through D-Day all the way to D+2. But before we play this monster game, Greg and I debate the German defensive strategy in France, or should I say, the multiple competing strategies. Are the Rommel worshippers right to suggest that he could have thrown back the Allied invasion if only his superiors would have listened? In the end, the German plan turned out to be a confused jumble brought about by political machination, egotistical generals, and the megalomania of the guy in charge.
Well, hold on. In Monty's defense,
I'm not talking about that megalomaniac. I'm talking about the Austrian guy out in the bunker in East Prussia.
Ah, yes, that one.
Well, you caught us. Our budget doesn't allow us to fly across the Atlantic to Normandy.
I wish, perhaps in Season 3, but today we are in Carlisle, Pennsylvania at the U.S. Army Heritage Center, touring reproduction bunkers like those that you would have found on the Atlantic Wall.
When you think of the Atlantic Wall, you imagine huge, ominous concrete blockhouses bristling with guns, a defensive line from Spain to Norway. In fact, the Atlantic Wall was mostly German propaganda, a fiction. The reality was that in spite of millions of tons of concrete being poured since 1941, it was anything but a wall.
Field Marshal Gerrit von Rundstedt, OB West, had been working on improving the defenses in France, but he was never really given priority for equipment or supplies. What he was given instead was a front row seat to an internal rivalry between the Army, the Navy, and the Tott organization, the three groups responsible for building the fortifications. With Hitler's attention focused elsewhere, little real progress could be made.
Führer Directive 51, issued in November of 1943, calls for an inspection of the shoddy defenses in Western Europe and for the development and implementation of a plan to improve them. Hitler sends a trusted general to Western Europe to inspect the defenses.
Enter Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, darling of the German propaganda machine, and at that time, still a favorite of Hitler's. Rommel is initially just an advisor being sent on a glorified propaganda tour.
Die deutsche Wehrmacht ist an dieser Küste auf einen Landungsversuch des Feindes vorbereitet, gleich wo oder wann er kommen mag. Generalfeldmarschall Rommel besichtigt einen Stützpunkt nach dem anderen.
But Rommel doesn't see his new gig as a vacation. He notes the sorry state of the defenses and presses Hitler for real action.
He makes his report to Hitler about the dire situation. Hitler names him commander of Army Group B in France.
Yes, and following Führer Directive 51, the Germans successfully launch a massive rebuilding program in France. And by the time D-Day rolls around, the German army there is at their strongest point since 1940.
And while some units such as Panzerlehr and the 12th SS were well trained, well led, and well equipped, the quality of the remaining 900,000 troops and their equipment in Western Europe ranged from fair to poor. Some of the troops in France were equipped with a hodgepodge of French, German, Czech, Russian tanks, artillery, vehicles.
Yeah, and given those challenges, a clear chain of command and a solid German plan were very sorely needed.
But we're talking Hitler here, so that's unlikely to happen.
Rommel is technically von Rundstedt's subordinate, but Hitler allows a dangerous power struggle to fester between them. Gerrit von Rundstedt had been recalled by Hitler from retirement to command all forces in the West.
The field marshal had been sacked once already and hadn't seen combat since when, 1941?
Yeah, that is true, but really if you think about it, he was advocating a proven German defensive strategy of sending a line of infantry forward as a screen to sort of contain the enemy advance while he husbanded a powerful armored reserve in the rear. Then, when the center of gravity could be discerned, he would launch a massive counterattack to envelop and destroy the enemy. It was a method the Germans had used with much success in Russia.
You know, I think Rommel should have been the man to command the Western defenses. He's the only German general with experience facing the Allied air and material superiority. Rommel planned for extensive use of obstacles and mines to slow the landings and channel the invaders to prepared defenses. Interconnected beach fortifications would provide some measure of protection from Allied aircraft, and placing the armor formations close to the invasion beaches would ensure that they could counterattack immediately. By closely hugging them, he would make it more difficult for the Allies to bring their superior air and artillery assets to bear, thus limiting their effect.
One of the important questions arising from the conflicting chain of command was the disposition of the panzer forces. Here, Hitler again refuses to be decisive, refuses to delineate the chain of command, instead giving some part of the mobile reserve to Army Group B, some to OB West, but with the provision that neither can commit them without Hitler's express authorization.
Well, and that's why I believe that perhaps Hitler should have given all the Panzer Reserve to Rommel. That way, they would be forward where they could respond immediately before Allied air power could chew them up.
That's true, but keeping the tanks close to the coastline for a rapid response sort of assumes that you know where the Allies are going to land in the first place. And the Germans simply didn't know that. And that's why I think that we should maybe give von Rundstedt just a little bit more credit and not call him a scapegoat, because the Germans did not know where the Allied landing would strike.
Well, let's go back to the club, let's look at some maps and study some possibilities.
I think that we can all agree on the subject of where the Allies might land. Everyone in the German high command was wavering. Von Rundstedt believed that the landing was going to happen at Pas de Calais, and Hitler and Rommel were both wavering back and forth between Normandy or Pas de Calais.
Yes, and a couple of weeks before the invasion, Rommel's focus begins to narrow on Normandy. As a result, he moves the 91st, the 352nd, and the 6th Fallschirmjäger Regiment close to the Normandy battlefields.
Well, whether that was an insightful stroke or just plain dumb luck, those redeployments were going to have a major impact on the American troops, specifically the ones landing at Omaha Beach.
Whether or not you think Rommel or von Rundstedt was right, either case, Hitler hamstringed the whole thing by keeping such a tight grip on the mobile reserves.
Yeah, totally agreed. And in today's game, we're going to give our German players a fighting chance by randomizing the availability of some of their armor. It's possible, but not guaranteed, that our German players may get some armor released sooner than it was historically.
We're going to recreate the critical first few days of Overlord in a multiplayer game with players operating British, German, American, and Canadian forces on a gigantic table we created using some of my 1/300th Heroics and Ross miniatures and Sam Mustafa's Rommel rules.
If you'd like to learn more about the rules being used in today's wargame, we will be posting a complete rule review of Rommel on our website very shortly. Stay tuned.
Wow, this is insane. Well, it's not the word I was looking for, but yeah, look at this.
Gentlemen, welcome to the fateful evening of June 5th, 1944. We are looking at the coast of Normandy, and each grid on our table is 2.5 kilometers. So, I'll have you guys break into our two teams, and we'll see if we can rewrite the history of Overlord.
Hi, I'm Josh Beck. I'll be commanding the U.S. Army 5th Corps landing at Omaha. I'll also be commanding the 82nd Airborne. I will try to establish a strong beachhead and move quickly to Bayou with the majority of the 5th Corps, and then the 82nd Airborne will help Keith move to Caratan.
And I'm General Collins, and I'll be controlling the 7th Corps. So I'll be landing at Utah Beach, and my plan is linked to Josh's, where I'm going to try to land my airborne, capture Caratan, and then move towards Bayou. We'll see if we can actually do that.
Yeah, this is going to be a tall order.
Hi, my name is Chow, and today I'll be operating with some British and Canadian forces, representing the command of Crocker.
I'm Tony. I'll be playing General Bucknell, commanding 30 Corps landing at Cold Beach.
Our basic plan is to try to move off the beach as quickly as possible so we don't get pushed back into the sea. Of course, our long-reaching plan is to take the town of Caen. However, it would appear to me that the Germans are going to try to prevent that.
Looks that way, doesn't it?
So I'm going to say this just once. Like any German officer, I'm only following orders. Hello, I'm Ed. I'm playing General Friedrich Dollmann of the German 7th Army today. My plan is to concede the left flank, shifting forces over as far as I can to Bayou or Caen. I have just returned from a inspection trip to the south of France, and also in negotiations with the government of Monaco. Fellas.
Don't forget your friends. I'm Tom. I'm playing General Gehr von Schweppenberg of German Panzergruppe West, and I will be deployed on the west, at least the units I'll command at the start of the game, near Caen. Our overall plan is to defend Bayeux and Caen and largely concede the beaches.
I'm Miles. I'm commanding the German 84th Corps. I'm in the center, and like my two compatriots here, I will be falling back to the center and to Caen to defend off the beaches.
Our scenario begins in the pre-dawn hours of June 6th, with over 20,000 American and British paratroopers dropping into Normandy. The 101st Airborne, 82nd Airborne, and British 6th Airborne are scattered across their historical drop zones. The Allied players are required to roll for possible drift and deviation, which was a major problem historically. But on the American half of the table, the nighttime drop is going off without a hitch.
Oh, look at that!
Both Keith and Josh suffer very little deviation and are quickly able to organize their paratroopers under the cover of darkness. With the exception of some static German bunkers, the Americans now safely control all the territory between Utah Beach and Carentan.
Actually, airdrop went pretty well. We didn't scatter as far as I thought we were going to. We're pretty well concentrated. I think we're not going to have too much of a problem clearing what's behind us that's approaching the beach, but we haven't moved on Carentan yet, so I don't know what waits us. So we'll see.
Our scenario restricts German activity in the pre-dawn hours, but Miles does make a subtle redeployment, concentrating more of the 352nd Infantry Division closer to Omaha Beach. It's a move that will have profound implications later in the day. Down on the opposite end of our 12-foot-long table, the 8,000 men of the British 6th Airborne hit the ground northeast of Caen.
But you can move diagonally.
Where's your support? Yeah. Our orders are to capture Caen on day one.
82nd Airborne.
And this last one only has one stand. The airborne drop actually went fairly well. There was a little bit of drift. It wasn't as bad as I expected. Our troops landed on the ground. We immediately attacked our left flank to try, and there's a couple of German units we noticed. We're trying to pin them or drive them off so that they can't interfere with the landings come morning.
So we were awakened in the night by evidently a drop of British paratroopers around Caen itself. We've shifted some Panzer Grenadiers closer to the western defenses of Caen and have moved some troops into bunkers. But that's how the night ended. I was a bit surprised. The British paratrooper assault seemed fairly successful. They seem to have landed where they wanted to and have now built up an ability to launch an attack against Caen sometime tomorrow.
Just after dawn on June 6th, landing craft disembark the first wave of American, British, and Canadian infantry across 5 separate beaches. Keith lands at the westernmost point with the 7th Corps on Utah Beach. His fellow American commander, Josh, brings the 5th Corps at Omaha Beach. Tony leads the British 30th Corps arriving on Gold Beach. And at the most eastern end of the table, Chow controls British and Canadian forces coming ashore at Sword and Juno. Opposing them are our 3 German players, each responsible for defending one of 3 game objectives: Carentan, Bayeux, and Caen. The Allies must control all 3 by the end of D+1 to score a decisive victory. Josh fully expected a tough landing at Omaha Beach, and he gets one. The first wave of Americans establish a narrow beachhead between Colville and Vierville. Historically, American forces on Utah Beach faced much less resistance, but to Keith's surprise, the German static formations in his sector are not throwing up their hands to surrender. Resistance at Utah is fearsome. Bottled up at both beaches, Josh and Keith look to their paratroopers for assistance. Fully concentrated, the 101st Airborne lines up to attack Carentan. The 506 Regiment, that of Band of Brothers fame, leads the assault against a lone German battalion stationed at the strategic crossroads.
That's not good.
Yeah, two. All right, so now I can.
Yes, you took Carrington. We got Carrington.
Really? Nice.
Carrington is ours.
What's that?
Hey Tony, can the armor react at all to the presence of enemy battalions adjacent to them?
The answer to Ed's question is no. Hitler has not released German armor for counterattack this early in the morning. But Ed is a resourceful German commander with some initiative, and while the scenario may limit his ability to move armor, he is free to make use of newly arrived infantry reserves from the west. Ed cleverly exploits a growing gap between Utah Beach and Carentan. German infantry overrun the paratrooper drop zones, severing the 101st and 82nd Airborne Divisions from their communication and supply. The Rommel rules being used in today's game penalize formations that are isolated, reducing their effectiveness.
Okay, well then I'll give you a situation update for the German left flank mid-morning. The American paratroopers have landed in force. They have overrun Carentan and they're moving on to Bayeux. My static forces did very well, rolled a lot of sixes. I hope that doesn't burn up my luck for the day. But reinforcements came on from Cherbourg, I presume, or in that vicinity, and we were fortunate enough to be able to overrun both American Airborne Division supply zones. I don't know what impact that'll have, but maybe it gets in the head of some of the American players.
At the other end of the table, Commonwealth forces are busy establishing 3 beaches. Initial German defenses at Gold and Juno beaches are stretched quite thin, but Miles and Tom make the curious decision to immediately abandon the German plan of not defending the beaches, instead advancing to the shoreline bunkers.
So how's it going with you, General?
There are a lot of Americans coming across on the beach and a lot of space to cover.
Yeah, there are a lot of spaces.
I believe I varied from our plan of falling back to defend the beaches up front.
The new German plan yields mixed results. At Gold Beach, Tony's 30th Corps hits the sand and wrecks 3 German battalions in short order.
Yes. Oh, nice.
At Juno Beach, Chow's Canadians skirt the defended village and press inland. But down at Sword Beach, the advanced German positions are giving the British a miserable time of it. Unable to break through the coastal fortifications, Chow calls on elements of the British 6th Airborne to help unhinge the German forward positions. With Tony's help, Sword Beach is finally opened.
Whoa, Chow's getting off the beach.
Hey, all right.
Momentum in the late morning swings toward the Allies. All 5 beaches are secured, and the mood among the 4 Allied commanders is decidedly optimistic.
Yes!
Attack off the beach.
Yeah, nice.
Second Airborne.
Right.
Kicking ass,
All Americans.
3 to 4. Woo!
Boom.
So with Crocker's commands, we're trying to break out of the beach. We have had some success in that. I learned, unfortunately, was reminded that attacking directly off of the beach leaves my troops vulnerable, so I was repulsed at one attempt to break out. But with the assistance of some of the British 6th Airborne, we've cleared an awful lot of the bunkers associated with the beaches close to Caen. However, it would appear on the horizon that there are German armored formations arriving in the vicinity. So we'll see how things go.
Chow is not mistaken. The German players have successfully rolled for the early release of the Panzers, and not a moment too soon.
I feel a little bit better now with the most recent reinforcements. We were able to get the Führer woke up, and at 10 o'clock on June 6th, a little earlier than expected, and we were able to release some armor, which has now come up to support the left flank of Caen, and I feel a little bit better about Caen at the moment. It looks like an attack is boiling up off Sword Beach.
By late morning, a major British attack is boiling up from Sword and Juno beaches, supported by Tony's paratroopers. The Commonwealth forces are primed for a breakout, but the Americans remain bottled up at Utah and Omaha. At this point, Josh and Keith make a seemingly minor decision that will have long-reaching consequences. Instead of turning back to secure their line of communication, both the 101st and 82nd Airborne press to exploit German weakness in the center by attacking deeper into the enemy lines. The paratroopers march east from Carentan toward Omaha Beach, hoping to relieve pressure on the landing zone.
This bold move gives Miles a lot to worry about. Not only are the airborne divisions operating in his rear, but the American infantry on Omaha Beach steadily chip away at his defenses. The situation will soon become untenable.
Things are very dicey near Omaha Beach. I've been flanked, and I've lost most of my fortifications. I think I've only got one hope, which is to try to attack and take the beach. I don't know if it's going to work, but it's either going to win the game or lose the game.
At 11 a.m. on June 6th, the entire 352nd Infantry Division moves against Omaha Beach.
All
right, I got 15 coming in.
Oh boy, this is it. This is it.
I bought attack broken up.
So take a unit out.
So you get to pick.
We're all the same.
Okay. Well, no, not that one. I don't like that one.
So I've got 11. I rolled a 3. Goes up 2. That's 4 hits. All right. I'm going to come in with the guy you said you couldn't come.
You ain't lying.
Come on, Miles!
Go! Oh, I got it. 18, 2 hits.
I lost the beach.
Well.
No, I only rolled a 4.
I got 12 coming in.
That's not good. Thank you, Chad.
I did, General Eisenhower, sir, it's not good. It's not good, Omaha, at all. We have lost Omaha for today, sir. I repeat, we have lost Omaha. Tomorrow, we will retake it. Promise, we will retake it.
The rules worked in my advantage, and I think all the players are not really familiar with the rules, so I think I actually took advantage of that, and I was very lucky to actually manage to take the beach. I think it's a pretty good thing.
For the Germans, taking Omaha Beach is a pretty good thing indeed. The entire American 5th Corps is now stacked up offshore, unable to continue landing troops today, freeing Miles to redeploy his battalions on Omaha Beach elsewhere. And his attention is sorely needed in 2 other sectors. American paratroopers are behind him to the west, and to the east, Tony's British are advancing from Gold Beach toward the objective at Bayou. Miles detaches a portion of his troops to delay the American airborne while sending the bulk of the 352nd Infantry Division to Bayou. In order to buy time for his infantry to reach this objective before the British, Miles cobbles together whatever ad hoc formations he can to fight a desperate delaying action.
I've got 14.
All right, I'm doing a tactical, and I'm withdrawing.
I thought about doing the pinning attack, but Miles is going to stand and fight me.
Miles has been making brilliant use of his ops board. In the Rommel rules, players spend dice to conduct operations and engage in tactics. In some ways, it becomes a game within the game, and in this respect, Miles is proving most adept. To the west, Ed also makes skillful use of the ops board. He conducts an operation that allows the Germans to place new bunkers, stymieing Keith's advance just as the Americans seemed on the verge of breaking out from Utah Beach. Together, Ed and Miles are also diverting resources to tighten the noose around the increasingly isolated, out-of-supply paratroopers of the 101st and 82nd Airborne. Deep behind German lines and lacking any support, the airborne troops are extremely vulnerable.
Hey, the 82nd did awesome. Thanks for coming.
This is the death of the 82nd.
I shift down, you shift down.
Ouchies. Good to know.
Oh, they go down hard.
Okay.
21.
Rolled a 3.
Yeah, you're probably killed.
19, 3.
Yeah.
1 or 2.
Well, yep, knocked out these guys. The 508.
Thanks, Miles. Good job.
The entire 508 is destroyed.
Hey, but Dick Winters is all right.
They gave a good fight.
He was in 506. I already got him killed.
Oh, you got him killed?
By now, the sun is sinking low on the horizon for June 6th. Chow's advance on Caen has been fairly uneventful, largely due to his own design. The British and Canadian troops advance slowly, methodically, grinding their way forward behind a steady bombardment of offshore naval gunfire. Chow and Tom do trade blows in a series of tank battles west of Caen, but it's clear that the Allies are content to slowly box in the German position with a patient, orchestrated advance. Darkness settles over the Normandy coast. D-Day is over, But both sides can expect to receive fresh reinforcements on June 7th. Join us next time for the conclusion of this epic wargame, played on the 75th anniversary of D-Day. Can the surrounded American paratroopers hold out much longer? Can Omaha Beach be reestablished? Who will win the race to Bayou? And will the arrival of the SS Panzer Corps turn the tide at Caen? It's a thrilling final chapter to our 7-player game. Thanks for watching Little Wars TV.